Hey everybody, we're on Roundtable on the street today. Got two incredible visionary CEOs. We've got Jesse from Base, breaking into institutional finance at an incredible rate. We have Aly Madhavji from Blockchain Founders Fund, one of the premier visionary investors in the space with I think over 200 investors now, or 200 investments now. Yeah. I had the pleasure of sitting in on one of your LP meetings the other day, and there's a lot of these crypto funds, and they're mostly tokens, and they may be up 10 billion and then down to $10 the next day. And what I was impressed about the most was your equity investments in infrastructure companies. And as I look at the industry, kicking in the door. Tokens, I built the industry and it's, several $1 trillion now. But what I'm impressed with what you're doing now is on the infrastructure side. And, I think about, investors who don't know a lot about the crypto space. They might have an ETF in, Bitcoin, maybe they bought Ethereum. But for the most part, I'd really love for you to think about somebody sitting in Scottsdale with $20, $30 million. They've heard about Bitcoin. Their nephew made them buy Bitcoin, but they're sitting on the Magnificent Seven, right? Yeah. And so I'd love for you to explain. Number one, the industry's a baby, but could you just give mainstream investors the scale of your business right now? Yeah. What kind of daily transactions you're seeing? Where was it a year ago? Yeah. Where is it going to be a year from now? Yeah. And I don't think people really understand the scale of what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, hey everybody, I'm Jesse. I created Base at Coinbase. If you don't know about Base, you can kind of think about the first phase of crypto as this speculative-driven phase where people are investing in Bitcoin and other assets. And I think over the last few years, we've started to enter kind of the next phase, which is this much more application-driven phase, where you have developers kind of all around the world starting to build real businesses and real products on chain that are solving real problems for consumers and businesses. And that ranges from commerce to payments to trading to social. And I think the way to think about Base is that it's basically an open stack for enabling that next phase. So it's built on top of Ethereum, but it's fundamentally a chain, which is kind of this foundational layer that's the global economy that people are contributing to. Then you have a whole suite of builder tools that are making it easier for builders and those developers to actually get the products out to market, reach, monetize. And then we also just launched a consumer product called the Base app. That's really kind of a front door that helps people access all those applications that are starting to emerge in this new economy.
You're talking about developers, but you're also maybe talking about, sounds like white label for, financial institutions. Yeah. And, I just thinking about just a couple of years ago, the major institution, Larry Fink not taking seriously the industry, and then this crazy pivot. Yeah. Crazy pivot. Now he's saying it's an $11 trillion industry very soon. And what it makes me think about is that these guys aren't ready from an infrastructure standpoint, and so they're desperate for Base, mm-hmm. right? They need to catch up, yeah. right? So what kind of growth are we seeing? It's got to be hyperbolic growth, right? Yeah. When you're entering, that many trillion who are using horse and buggies, you've got an ICBM. Can you explain that growth? What should people be thinking about in terms of how can they get exposure to Base with that kind of growth?
Yeah, so 2 years ago, Base didn't exist. Today, Base is far and away the largest L2 in the industry. It's one of the top chains. Yeah. We've gone from no transactions to I think last month we did something like almost 100 million stablecoin transactions. We're doing 15 million transactions a day. It's driving kind of real business value for people across the whole spectrum. And I think that the way people can gain exposure is a few ways. One is obviously like Base is coming from Coinbase, and Coin I think is such an incredible asset to get like a broad-based exposure to crypto, to Base, to all the other incredible stuff that Coinbase is pushing forward. And then the other way is that there's an emerging.
Could you stop there?
Yeah.
So that's the parent.
That's the parent.
So
exactly.
Again, I'm going to ask dumb questions. Yeah. Okay. So, my dad is sitting on the golf course right now, and he wants to know what is the next Magnificent Seven. And so that's the parent. The growth is now institution. Yep. I think it's got to be the fastest growing space on the planet other than AI. Yep. So how else can they get exposure?
Yeah, so I think the one way is through the parent, because Base is being incubated by Coinbase and then kind of gradually decentralizing as this global economy.
It's a public company.
Yeah, it's a public company. You can go buy its coin on the stock exchange. The other way is that there's new emerging asset class of native businesses that are being built on Base. And that ranges from businesses like Aerodrome, which is like an exchange, to Zora, which is a consumer social product, to Definitive, which is much more of like a trading interface. And these businesses are, you can kind of think about next generation startups that are being built on this new application platform and are global from day one. And so I think for investors that are looking to kind of get more broad-based exposure to the Base ecosystem, that's going to be another big way. And then we actually just had some news a couple weeks ago, which is that we're in the very early stages of exploring a Base token. And there's a bunch of reasons why I'd want to do that, from decentralization to aligning stakeholders. But I think this is just an exciting journey that we're going to go on as one of the first public companies to kind of navigate this. And we're getting a lot of feedback right now. We're hearing from a lot of investors who want to be involved. And we're listening, learning, and going to make a lot of progress on that.
Could you talk a little bit about your engineers? What we've found is, once you have a foundation, that basically building out applications on that, being able to instruct AI to essentially duplicate the infrastructure, but with maybe a different front end.
Yeah.
Could you talk to me about acceleration of your software related to AI? Are you hiring more? Are you shrinking your engineering team? Just kind of talk about your infrastructure growth.
Yeah, well, we're seeing that Base is the easiest place to build in all of crypto right now. And that's because it uses a really common and well-known toolkit, EVM, and then it has all of this infrastructure that we've invested in over the last 2.5 years that really makes it best in class. And the really powerful thing about that is when you're kind of getting the acceleration from Base, the kind of structural technology changer you're leveraging is on-chain, which is really a new way of building software where payment is built in, identity is built in, and it's global from scratch. And so as we've been building out the Base team, what we're seeing is that we can literally build things with 10x leverage versus the legacy Web2 way of building it.
Right.
A good example of this is a partnership we did with Shopify, where we actually built a commerce protocol with them that does all of the kind of complex, gnarly components of commerce, including chargebacks and fraud and merchant of record and taxes. And those were millions of lines of code in their legacy systems. And we worked with them to write it into smart contracts, and it ended up being hundreds of lines of code. And so we're literally seeing this kind of structural shift in how people build applications, where you can build it 10 times faster and 10 times more accessible.
Everybody's thinking about banking and finance. I can't believe that more people aren't talking about commerce.
It's
right?
coming.
I mean, tell me.
I think it's coming. I think it's coming. I think that there's kind of two kind of.
Why has it been so slow?
Two reasons. One is that I think we have had to do a lot of infrastructure work. It took us a decade to get to fast, cheap, easy to use chains. But now that's there. I think the other thing about commerce is that when you look at it on a global scale, in most local regions, the payments solutions actually work pretty well. In the United States, we have credit cards. In emerging markets, maybe you have QR Pay, or you have these kind of M-Pesa style till number pay. And so that means that commerce is not something where you're going to maybe get the same viral growth that you would have gotten back as in 2000 when PayPal first went live, because that viral growth kind of already happened. And so I think that what we're going to see with commerce is that it's the structural massive efficiency gain that's going to improve business margins, help small businesses be more successful, but it's going to play out on kind of a linear growth time cycle, where it's going to look like the adoption of Apple Pay or the adoption of credit cards, where it's just year over year, more and more of the world's infrastructure is powered by stablecoins, powered on-chain, powered by Base, and that's going to be kind of a slow but impactful grind up. And then I actually think the stuff that we're going to probably see faster growth around is these new assets that are being issued, social, some of the things that have a little bit more built-in virality.
Yeah, I got it. And what about credit cards? Is this some? Yeah.
Well, I think credit cards, what we're seeing, they can be a really powerful entry point for consumers to start getting comfortable with crypto. So, for instance, Coinbase just launched this new Bitcoin cashback card where you get 4% back, or up to 4% back in Bitcoin, and it's been a huge success, a massive waiting list, tons of people signing up. And what we're seeing is that when people start to use a crypto credit card or a crypto debit card as a primary payment method, they end up saving in stablecoins, they end up investing more in the crypto economy, they end up doing payments natively in stablecoins, and so it can be a really powerful bridge for getting people into this new ecosystem.
Can you just answer the dumbest question in the world? Fraud, right?
Yeah.
The cost of fraud in credit cards, Is it solved overnight?
I would not say it's solved overnight. I'd say, crypto and these new payments products, you have a strong foundation to rebuild a bunch of the credit infrastructure. But the truth is that, credit is also expensive because you have to do underwriting, you have to figure out these risk models. And a lot of those learnings I actually think will apply to the new products that people are building on-chain. The best mental model that I have for on-chain is it's kind of like the replatforming of the internet, where you're still going to have deep business expertise and business systems that need to be built. You now just have a much better technology system to build them with. And so all of those learnings around credit will transfer over as people start to build the new products.
Hey, Aly, I think in terms of funds, you've probably got the most infrastructure investments in the industry, here in your now hometown of Singapore. Could you talk about what you're thinking about for Base, and are there some of the companies that you're working with that is going to leverage the incredibly fast-growing technology that they're coming out with?
Absolutely. So, if we go back, a number of years, go back 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, right? You'd use things like Ethereum as sort of your L1. Mm-hmm. And, oftentimes it might take 6 hours for a transaction, or 2 hours when it was very congested, right? And you might actually spend a lot of money. Like, I've spent $600 on a transaction, I've spent $1,000 on a transaction, and that oftentimes makes less sense than even using the banking system then, right? And so what's been incredible is in just 2 years, right? You've been able to come out with Base. It's built an incredible ecosystem. We've already got companies that are building on Base, helping to leverage, the community as well that you've built. And, all of that, I think, is helping to, like you were saying, almost 10x or exponentially help grow and, these companies and help give them like a major audience. And so now you've got these, apps, right? Like all of your next sort of consumer layer products that are coming out on Base, and it's easily one of the top choices that you're seeing new companies in the industry when they're looking at, hey, where do I build? Base is always in the conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's been exciting to be here in Singapore, because I think we're seeing so much good energy from Asian builders on Base, whether it's in Singapore or Korea and Japan, where we were last week. I think folks, kind of see the trusted platform that it provides. They see the technology gains. There's some cultural alignment around this, like what does it mean to be based and working hard and staying optimistic. And it's been just really validating to be here and start to hear that energy and feel it, because you can feel it from afar, but it's different to be here in person.
That growth is so impressive.
Yeah.
I would ask you objectively, what do you think about the competitive landscape? Who are you out bidding against from a white label standpoint? And what do you think the key differentiation for your company?
I think the first thing is that we're still in such early days that the primary thing is how do we grow the pie? And I think just in the last few months, we've started to see that more and more large players, both existing crypto players and scaled Web2 players, are starting to kind of look at what Coinbase has done with Base and be like, whoa, we think that there's value in doing this as well. I think one of the things that we're really focused on is that if we end up down a path where all of these different big businesses do these corporate chains and they're siloed and disconnected, I think there's a risk that we kind of rebuild the existing systems with the new technology. And so a lot of what our focus is on is how do we actually connect those things up? We obviously started connected to Ethereum. That's, as an L2, that's been a really important bridge and partner for us. We just announced and launched a Solana bridge, which will let customers bring in assets from Solana, use them in the Base ecosystem, bring assets outside of Base. And so I think in general, our feeling is let's push that forward and figure out how we can accelerate the broader industry as we grow through the next phase.
It's fantastic. You didn't quite answer the question. How many players are pursuing this, I guess, several $1 trillion pie?
I think that if you look at the number of chains that have launched, there's hundreds at this point. I think that there's a handful of people who are kind of in this prime position where the developer audience is growing, the economy is growing, they have the technology foundation, and I'm excited to be building alongside them.
Yeah, it feels like scale and regulatory, the fact that you've overcome regulatory issues is going to be a huge barrier to entry.
Yeah,
I would imagine.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of parts, right? So while there's a lot of chains, right, there's only a few chains that are sort of in those main conversations, right? When you're a developer and you're looking at building, I think that has a couple of key components to it, right? So one is, where is there very simple dev tooling? Where is there a great community around it that's going to help you when you build that product to go get an audience, right? And those are some of the key things that people are thinking about. And Base is definitely, among the top of that list.
Yeah, we see basically that people choose Base for 3 reasons. The first is because it's the easiest place to build, and that shows up again and again. It's just like when you're trying to get started, the combination of the toolkit and the platform makes Base the best. The second is that when builders are building their first products, they need distribution, and we've spent a lot of time working with Coinbase and building our kind of global distribution across a bunch of different regions, including in Asia. And so they kind of see Base as a channel for them to reach new audiences, and that's been huge. And then the third is that I think there's a differentiated community of people who are building on Base. We've kind of had this ethos from the beginning. I think part of this was us deferring the kind of token conversation of like, you come to Base if you want to build a global economy. And that is this like bold, ambitious, very long-running vision where I think it's kind of led to this almost siren's call of the people who are motivated by that, have that intrinsic motivation, and then are figuring out, okay, how do we like now marry the best of business? They're coming to build on Base. And so, it's a privilege to get to be a part of it.
Jesse, your energy is really incredible, and probably a big reason why you guys are growing so fast. You seem very excited about the space and very excited about Base, and just the whole area is something that we really want investors to understand.
Yeah.
But congratulations on your great work and your great growth.
Thanks. Well, it's still day one, and I'm really excited about more investors understanding Base as well, because I do think that we've been, a little bit slower on that because we've only been here for 2 years versus other folks that have been here for maybe 5 years, 10 years. But I think when you look at the quality of assets that are being originated on Base right now, and this ranges from, like coins that are connected to protocols and products on Base to this new emerging creator coin kind of market that is thinking about creator economy moving on chain. I don't think that there's a single chain in the world where there are higher quality assets being issued right now. And so for investors, that's the opportunity. It's to get in early on these new asset classes and see the returns that I think are going to be coming from that. So excited to support more investors on Base too.
So much to talk about with Base. We'd love to have you on in the future,
Yeah.
and maybe we can kind of hit each project slowly over the next several months and introduce Base to the world.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.